Streets Committee to order. It's October 4th, 2021 at 6:45 p.m., and this is a Streets Committee meeting of the City of Sylvania City Council, and this is to discuss the speed bumps on Cushman Road. Present are committee members Patrick Richardson, Doug Hanum, Mark Fry, and myself, Mary Westfall, who is chair of the committee. Also joining us from City Council, Brian McCann and Katie Cappellini. From administration, we have Mayor Stow, Bill Sanford, Leslie Brining, Kevin Aller, and Chuck Silvernail. I believe with that I've gotten everyone in. We do have guests with us today. Sorry to say I can't find no, it's Rachel. Jessica, I'm sorry about that. So I want to start this meeting by sharing that we have had a couple reports on the Cushman Road speed bumps, but prior to this, we did extend the time for this meeting and pushed it back a bit so that we could allow more time for some responses to come in to the cards that were distributed, inquiring about the community interest from our partners on Cushman Road to participate or to have the speed bumps come in. So with that, I'm going to open it up to Mr. Aller to give us a full report on where we landed with all of that info.
Yes, we did extend the time as Ms. Westfall indicated, and to date have had 11 of 33 postcards returned that were in favor of 11 of 33 postcards returned in favor of speed humps. We had 4 returned that were opposed, and then the remaining 8 did not send them. So on, there are basically 4 criteria policy that council passed back in 2005. Thank you. And that the first criteria for there is that postcards returned in must be 80% more. That criteria was at 80% of the cards sent out. The second criteria is that it must be a residential street with a speed limit of 25 miles per hour or less. It does meet that criteria. It is a residential street and it's 25 miles per hour. The third criteria is that the average daily traffic must be above 1,000 vehicles per day. The average daily traffic in the northbound direction was 148 vehicles, and the average daily traffic in the southbound direction was 9 vehicles. So that's approximately 300 vehicles. So that criteria is not met. And the fourth criteria is existence of a speeding problem. And the way that is defined is that the 85th percentile speed must exceed the speed limit by at least 10 miles per hour. In this case, the 85th percentile speed would have to be miles per hour. The 85th percentile speed is the speed at which 85% of the traffic travels at or below. So 85% of 85% vehicles travel at or below this speed. For Cushman Road, in the northbound direction, the 85th percentile speed was 20 miles per hour, and in the southbound direction, 27 per hour. So that criteria was also not met. So of the 4 criteria in the policy, the only criteria that this area met was the fact that it's 25 miles.
Thank you, Mr. Aller. Any questions for Mr. Aller?
I have a few questions. Mr. Aller, on the speeding one that you just went through with the 85th percentile, that doesn't strike me as something that council would have come up with on its own. I'm assuming there's some reason behind that for traffic purposes or some traffic engineering reasoning behind that. Can you explain that to us, please?
Yeah, that's typically, the 85th percentile speed is typically when you take a look at any kind of speed limit study. Alexis Road study that we did a couple years. And it really takes a look at, in general, people travel what they feel comfortable traveling. If that is if you are in a 25 mile per hour zone, you're in an area that the people feel comfortable traveling 45 miles per hour. That can be a concern and so the 85th percentile is what is looked at that most people feel comfortable traveling whatever area. And so that's what's looked at. In this case, in one direction it was actually less than the speed limit. The other direction only 2 miles per hour over. That's something. If we were to station police officers, 85% of the traffic wouldn't. We're not going to pull somebody over 50 miles per hour over. So that's why we set it at that 35, because once you get to 35, then the traffic is moving in such a manner that, well, you have too much of the traffic traveling in a control it just with selective enforcement officers up there. You have to do something a little more advanced, such as something.
And when we did that study, when did we do it relative to the construction?
It was prior to the construction. And we had, as soon as we received the petition, I'm sorry, it was prior initial construction than the construction that was.
So it was after
Probably.
the streets were already smoothed out? Okay, because to me that,
I apologize.
if I recall correctly, the street wasn't in great condition before. If I recall
Right.
the PCR ratings from years ago. But once you smooth the streets, I'm assuming that people might have a tendency to go a little faster. That's why I was curious. Okay.
Right.
Any other questions for Mr. Eller?
Do we know why the thought process of council selected the 85% of cards in the positive? I know that was before your time, Mr. Aller. I didn't know if,
You mean 80% of the cards, is that
or
what you're saying?
80% of the cards, excuse me.
You know,
Like I need to find.
I don't, well, I'll let Mr. Eller answer that question.
No, I don't.
Okay,
I think, to be honest, Mr. Fry, we were of the sense that a discussion tonight might have been to revisit that if in fact the numbers were very close to that 80%. But
Right.
I think that that's part of the discussion certainly that we can look at if we need to, but I think we want to be aware of where we are with the criteria at this moment in time as well.
The law director has handed me legislation from 2005. Originally, it was established as a 70% of the residents want the installation of speed humps. That was changed in 1993, 75%, and raised again in 1998 to 80%. I, like you, Mr. Haynem, I can't remember exactly why, but I think that the bar was raised simply to make sure that enough residents really wanted it. It had to be more than a simple majority. We used to have a lot more of them in the city. They were everywhere. But as streets have been replaced or repaved, the residents have chosen not to have those put back in. But we still have some very important ones, like over on Maple Drive, Silica, where there's a lot of through traffic.
Thank you very much, Mr. Aller. I will share with the group, while this is not a public hearing, this is a committee meeting, I do know that Ms. Redkemper and Mr. Schultz have joined us here today, and I'd like to give them an opportunity to speak if you're comfortable with that, if they would like to. Would you like to address council? And if you'd give us your name and your address, just for formalities we're required to do.
Jessica Ray Kemper, 5820 Cushman Road. For extending the hard time period. I do feel like if I would have known and the residents would have known that the postcards would be part of the process, may have been more willing to comply back. I did get information about, I think, the rest of the process pretty much, which I did share with people when I went around to collect signatures. You know, and people who were on board were that the postcards were like, what's this? We already signed the petition. Why do we have to do it? So easy to send a postcard back. I realize that. But, you know, I think maybe the mentality was already this. Why do we have to do it again? Also, in the future scenarios like ours, residents, if I could speak on behalf of residents, they would appreciate told that their speed bumps will be taken out. So a process or voting could take place before I has to do all the work that I did. One other unrelated domain. My mother visited a few weeks ago and noticed that after the work done at acres, no signs to say which street is which. Signs on.
Thank you for mentioning that. Mr. Eller, I'm sure we'll take a look at that right away, and we certainly would want to get that resolved, so that's very helpful. I want to personally thank you for all of your effort in terms of getting the petitions through. It is part of the process to have the petitions processed so that, in fact, then we can mail out the postcards. And while I understand that might be something that was a frustration for you to have the postcards go out, that is how the process works. One of the things that we learn as council members and as people who are working on a regular basis with these sorts of things are oftentimes people will sign petitions for a friend and they maybe are not as interested. I'm not saying that's the case here, but they're not really as committed to the discussion, but they like their friend and don't want to say no to their friend. So that's why we do the postcards, to give them an opportunity to objectively make the decision if they want to participate or not. That doesn't mean it applies in this particular situation. And certainly, I think, I don't know what direction council will go tonight, but I do anticipate, or the committee rather, I do anticipate that if there was a decision to not move forward at this point, it is something that could be revisited at another point in time.
That, and I do understand that about cards. I will say that almost all of my neighbors, which was amazing. So
Fine.
now we're, but before, you know, I really, a couple of them.
Well, you have a great group of people back there, and I'm sure that this process, while not always fun, does help to bring a group together. So,
Sure.
Thanks. So with that, I don't know if there's any further discussion from members of the committee or members of council. Mm-hmm. Well, and I'd like to know what the speed numbers are on Ivywood Lane as well. I'm totally teasing you. Thank you. Like to come up and introduce yourself and your address.
My name is Peter Schultz. I'm at 5820 Cushman Road. I wondered if we choose not to go through with the speed, what is the residents' course of action for excessive speeding on our road?
I would actually defer to administration on that. I think that certainly we have police regularly visiting and moving throughout our community. So I think that that will continue to happen, strong police support. And I think if there continued to be a serious problem, it would be something that could be brought to our attention. But I don't know if there's anything more specific that. Would you ever put a speed sign up just so that people could, like on a short-term basis, and see what's, felt like there was a.
Do you take reports from residents, identifiable vehicles or license plates, anything like that? People that have a repetition? Yes, I'm not interested in fighting somebody, just saying, hey.
Evan,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
perfect. What was the car count? 3 something,
317. 317.
3 7 5. That
85% of the vehicles are traveling at 27 miles per hour or
that does
less.
leave vehicles a side of. Yes, is there? We record how fast a vehicle.
Oh, yes.
And I guess I'm
Wait,
a
no,
little,
that number's, those numbers
is
are
my
wrong.
math wrong?
Yeah, your math is wrong, because
Yeah.
17.
the 85 was 22 and 27. 35 would be the cutoff. But we don't have data on how many are driving 35 or.
I have that.
Oh, you do?
Yes, I'm sorry.
I guess
I
my
have that,
concern
I
is
have
this.
that at the office.
It seems
I don't
like-
have that here, but I have that.
This seems disconnect numbers and total number of the number one with the winning vote. Much more people.
Just as a clarification, when you have the speed assessment, is it the big honking box that puts the speed up that says you're going too fast, or is it the tax strips that basically roll across the street and people are just rolling across and they're feet apart and it measures the speed?
We use speed boxes they're probably about a foot by foot by foot, a foot by foot and a half. We attach those to a pole, or we install a pole. Sometimes we install them to a tree. we install them someplace that we can get a good reading of the speed. And there's nothing flashing, it's just that box is setting on a arbitrary tree or pole that collects all of the.
So John Q. or Susie Q. citizen wouldn't necessarily know that observed at that. Okay.
That's our only solution is there must be a way to make it less. Gotta be others. Make the road skinnier.
I think those are 11-foot lanes, which is the minimum. Can make some weight, you can make some curves and that. We're pretty limited on Cushman.
I'm not sure I want to do another road construction project on Cushman this year.
Yeah,
Just not trying to be, but I'm afraid we're going to get shanghaied if that was going to happen.
Mr. Ayler, if, let's say, a year from now, there's more question in that area, is it something we can revisit? So, it's not like everything is done forever now in terms of Cushman Road, but if we see that as things settle in, the roads get back under control, we have continued to have concerns about speeding from our neighbors there, we could do another assessment and see if things have changed.
Yeah, we've done, actually in 10 or 11 years that I've been here, done speed studies on Summit Street. So it's not anything that we want to do every year. A lot of places that and for different reasons, speed taxes. But
Okay. Thank you. Okay, any? No, thanks. So,
I will say, yeah, Mr. Aller did give the time frame of when the initial study was done with the box. And since then, since the construction's cleared out for a while, it seems like residents figured out that we have our speed. So we see, essentially what I mean is we see a lot of new cars coming down the street. Assume they're avoiding acres speed hump. Definitely, some of them are people I know who live in Sunrise Circle. Rarely drove down our street prior to this. But those people who are avoiding the speed humps are obviously the people who are in a hurry and have larger.
very good feedback. I drove through there today and noted that as I came through, first of all, it all looked much better. And when I drove up through Acres, that definitely the speed bumps were there. So that makes some sense as well. So with this discussion, I'm not hearing a motion to advance legislation at this point in time. Does the committee feel comfortable with revisiting this if there becomes an additional question from the neighbors there?
Yeah.
Agreed. I would like to have enhanced vigilance based upon the comments of one of our neighbors this evening, perhaps in that neighborhood like we have in other places, just to
I think that's a
just to
great
give people a,
suggestion.
hey, keeping an eye on a little. I know we do it consistently in a lot of places around the city. Just a little more focus over in that spot.
I think that's great. Great. And one other thing, certainly I knew when I pulled back through there what the speed limit was, so I was not looking for speed limit signs, but to make sure the speed limit signs are prominent. See them. Again, I wasn't looking, I probably drove right by it, but I knew what I was supposed to be doing, but make sure that they're prominent and that possible. All right. With that, is everybody comfortable with that decision from the group? All right. Any other business to come before the Streets Committee this evening? Hearing none, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded that we adjourn at 7:14. Wait, let me see. 7:11. All in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. This meeting stands adjourned.